How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am the curator for the Golden Age, and this is another episode of... What are you doing?
What?
Oh, please do not tell me that you are looking at Miss Fury fan art.
No, of course not.
Oh, God.
Are we going to do this video, Lost Heroes of the Golden Age?
Yeah. We're doing Miss Fury. This is a request video from, name right here.
I should do this review.
Oh, absolutely not.
Why?
Because you are a pig.
What has that got to do with it?
Look, just sit there and watch the review.
Yeah, that I can do.
You know, it's reasons like this that I want to stop reviewing female characters.
That really sounds like a you issue.
Anyways, we are doing Miss Fury. Now, she is an interesting one. She actually started in comic strips. She didn't start in the comic books. Now, she would have a small comic book run, but most of her adventures took place in strips. Now, not having access to old-timely comics, I could not find the issues. And I mentioned in the middle part of the video that I have not been able to find any of the old comics or the old strips. Since then, I actually have found a few things, and I will mention that she spent more time in her civilian identity than she did in her costume identity. There's actually a reason for that, which I will explain in the intro. Also, she had a bit of an influence on some of the fighter pilots in World War II. And we'll also cover that. It's interesting. She did not wear her costume a lot, but she did wear it enough to be able to gather some arch enemies. But it's a weird thing when... I don't quite know how to put it. You are a civilian more than you are a hero, but you are portrayed as being a hero. It's an interesting thing. I got the review. I found an issue. I did find a comic that we reviewed. Felt like we jumped right into a storyline, but that's where it actually begins. So, let's go ahead and go over Miss Fury. From what I've been able to find, I did cover a bit of an origin and her powers. So, let's get started. In full disclosure, I did have something filmed that I wasn't satisfied with, so I actually went back and redid this entire video. I hope you enjoy it. Miss Fury, Marla Drake, first appeared in Black Fury newspaper strips in April of 1941. She was originally published by Bell Syndicate and was created by June Taper Mills. Two things. One, Black Fury newspaper strips would later be changed to Miss Fury. And number two, June Taper Mills actually went by Taper Mills at the time. She actually claimed that she wanted her name to sound a little more masculine because she didn't want people to know that she was a female doing the strips. Females back then in the 1940s were mostly connected to romance novels, so she didn't want people realizing that she was a woman doing this. Miss Fury is actually the first female protagonist to be completely drawn and colored by a female artist. Now, Miss Fury, since Miss Fury is a comic strip, I don't actually have access to those. She would go on to do more than 200 strips. Now, early on, Marvel Comics would do an 8-series run of Miss Fury, but what they did, well, they were timely at the time, but what they did is they just reprinted what was in the comic strip. So if you were reading the comic strip, you read the 8-period set. Now, her origin is kind of different from others, since I can't review the origin like I've done with other Golden Age characters, we're just going to go ahead and do the origin research. Now, I'll go over it here. Marla Drake was a wealthy socialite, and I think she was going to a costume party. When she found out that another girl was wearing the same thing that she did, she decided that she wanted to put on a different outfit, and this was to avoid embarrassment. I guess two people showing up with the same outfit would be embarrassing. Now, one of her maids suggested that she wear this outfit that, well, they said it was a panther skin outfit that was given to her by her friend Albino Joe. Albino Joe was actually a adventurer who had been all over the world. What she may or may not have realized at the time is that this panther suit was imbued with powerful dark magic. And the thing about this suit is for every favor that it granted, it would cause two misfortunes to happen. So throughout much of her comic strip, she did not wear the costume a lot because of the misfortune that happened with it. Now, she did wear the costume enough to get some, well, I don't know if they were arch enemies. Miguel Rico, Dr. Damien Seraph, General Bruno Betts? I guess it's Betts. Okay. Now, on the way to the party, probably should have said this first, instead of making it to the party, she helped recapture an escaped murderer. And the press started calling her Black Fury, although she would later correct them to be Miss Fury, much as in the real life, as they started with Black Fury and would later call her Miss Fury. Let's see. Her vigilante exploits would catch the attention of Detective Carey, and he sought to find out who she really was. He would later partner up with Marla in attempts to find out who the Black Miss Fury was, and would end up falling for her. Now, one of the things that was interesting about this is she would help rescue the abandoned son of the Baroness Aaron von Koff and Gary Hale. Now, she would never know the true parentage of the child. She actually thought that this was the child of, Dr. Damien Seraph, who actually kidnapped the child so he could perform deadly experiments on her. She rescued the child and then attempted to adopt the child, but was originally blocked from adopting the child, and then was later granted the ability to. She would leave Brazil and head back to America, and for the remainder of her strip, she would actually be a single woman raising the child, which in the 1940s was completely unheard of and remarkably progressive considering the time. She enlisted the help of her friend Francine, who, her friend Francine, who Marla offered to be her child's governor or governess. That's like a nanny. And Francine had a job at the time at the war plant, but with the servicemen coming back after World War II, she had lost her job, so she took on the governess. I actually learned about the governess because of a Doctor Who episode, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, now the strips would go on a lot like this. She would fight crime as Black Fury, but for most of her strips, she would not be Miss Fury. She'd be this wealthy socialite. Now, Christian groups were kind of against Miss Fury because, honestly, she's a bombshell. I mean, I'm putting up some of her civilian identity here. You can see why this was created. This comic book strip was created for guys to look at a bombshell. That's what she is. She was so popular in this role that servicemen actually put Miss Fury on the side of a number of their planes. Now, I found a few planes here that you can see the fact that they put her up there. Now, the Miss Fury would kind of fall, I guess, after her print was stopped for a while, she would actually fall into the realm of obscurity, but that wouldn't last long. Miss Fury is a skilled athlete. She's also a climber, acrobat, and a fighter. She is, well, she's very intelligent, and she has amateur detective skills. Well, of course, every crime fighter was an amateur detective or professional detective back then. You kind of had to be. Now, when she wore her Panther suit, the suit did give her some enhanced abilities because, black magic from a witch doctor. The suit did have claws, and she sometimes would go around with spiked heels. She also had a whip that she would use on occasion. Now, in 1991, Miss Fury would have a revival of sorts. Adventure Comics, which was a subsidiary, or an imprint of Malibu Comics, would put out a 4-part miniseries of Miss Fury where she has to contend someone dressed up as Black Fury. She ends up clearing her name, and as a result of the issues also falls into a vat of chemicals. They don't specify the chemicals. The end result of her falling into the chemicals gives her increased strength and increased aggression. Now, her run would end with the 4-part miniseries, but she would later return to the pages of Malibu Comics as part of Malibu Comics The Protectors. She would be a premiere in issue 10, 11, and 12. And then she would appear periodically on the pages of the Protectors until their last issue, which was issue 20 in 1994. Apparently, Malibu had a lot of Golden Age characters appearing in these pages because of Golden Age characters being public domain. You can use anything you want, and Miss Fury was public domain. Now, Dynamite Entertainment would have a revival of Miss Fury in 2012. Now, I am not going to go over everything here. There's a lot of what she's done, and makes me actually want to start checking this out. In 2012, 2013, 2014, all the way up to 2021, which we're in right now, where she is getting, I believe she's getting a new series, a new graphic novel being done about her, but I believe in the newest comic she's, let's see, an elderly woman in the modern day retirement home who is prompted by a zombie outbreak to again don her costume. So, after her strip, forgot about for a little bit, brought back in the early 90s, and then wasn't brought back into the 2000s, where she's just, Dynamite Entertainment is using full access, or using all the abilities they have of using her being public domain. So that's basically it, the rundown of Miss Fury throughout the years. Now, I was able to find one comic, and I did do a a review of that so you can get a basic idea of probably how the comic strips wrote. It's a story already in progress, but let's go ahead and check out the review, and you'll have the basic idea of Miss Fury. Now, I feel that we've entered a story already in progress, but it's the only one I can find. Miss Fury in Brazil. It's accursed. It's black magic. Although the wearer of the black leopard skin may have any wish granted, with a favor gained will go to misfortune. So spoke the sage albino Indian, who knew the true story of the black leopard skin, which was willed along with a sizable fortune to Marla Drake, Miss Fury, by her wealthy explorer uncle. Nevertheless, Miss Fury dons the skin, and it helps her to rescue a child from its kidnappers. We start off, it looks like someone's having a shootout, and then that's exactly what he says. Step on the gas, Ray. I'm going to shoot it out with them. Here goes. And we see him, I guess Ray, the guy driving, suddenly has a fit or something. Maybe he got hit by a bullet, because he crashes into the wall, and the cops say that the two guys trying to drive away are dead. We see Miss Fury with a child on her back, and the child starts to holler. She suspects that if she takes the mask off, the baby will quiet, I guess he's a toddler, will quiet down. See, you remember me, don't you, little fella? Hold on tight. Hold on real tight, honey. We have a lot of climbing to do. And as they're climbing off to the rooftop, there is a guy who says, let's see, I was positive she was the Baroness, but I just got a good look at her face. Who is she? Wait till Seraph hears this. Apparently he works for a guy named Seraph. Now, Miss Fury gets down to the ground and wants to change her clothes before the police find her. The police are on the rooftop, and they say we heard a child crying in a woman's voice, but as they search around, they find nothing. The guy who wants to report to Seraph hides out in the chimney and hears the cops talking, and from their explanation, it sounds like Seraph is dead, so, he says, I'll never forget her face. We go to the next morning. Golly, I'm worried. How can I explain about the child being here? If detectives had trailed me, I could be charged with kidnapping. What can I tell? So she's telling this tale of the three little pigs to the toddler, which I just now realize how old the story actually is. While she's telling the story, she's also consumed in her thoughts about how she's going to explain how she has this child. She gets to the part about the big bad wolf, and the child starts to sing the song, and he also wants her to continue with the story. There is a ring of the doorbell, and she's afraid it's the detectives, and then she finds out it's just the maid. She dismisses the maid by telling her that this is the child of a friend of hers. And the maid wants to know, where are your toys? Why don't you have any clothes? And she's like, you don't need to be here right now. It's okay. And she decides that she needs to take action. So it says 10 minutes later, they get in the elevator and they leave. And she goes to what seems to be a lawyer's office. They start having a conversation about how this is the son of the person, Seraph, that was mentioned earlier, but they can't seem to find out who the mother is. After there's just a lot of talking here. If it wasn't for the fact that I was trying to read this thing, I might actually get a little bored. But they go across, yes, it's his son, the records are sealed, I don't know. Well, they say that the boy needs to be taken to an orphanage, and she is startled by this. The little boy clings to her and starts to cry, saying, please take me with you. I don't want to leave to an orphanage. And Miss Fury, Marla, is like, I don't want to leave you. And then we cut to 6 weeks later. We see two maids are talking about the clothes that she has for the adopted boy. And one maid says, I thought she was refused. And then the other maid says, well, if you read the headlines, since Marla was responsible for helping to rescue the boy, they decided to let her adopt the lad. We cut to the page where this guy that we saw from the beginning of the story with the monocle, who appeared to be a butler, is reading the paper, and we find out that the child, he says it's the Hale child. We find out that it is not the child belonging who they thought it did. He says that he realizes that this is the child of the Baroness, who he thought that she was in the beginning, probably because she rescued the child, so she thought the Baroness was rescuing her own child, and Gary Hale. And Gary Hale used to be engaged to Marla, who turned out to be Miss Fury. So the child, and she thinks it's a child of a crime lord, belongs to her former fiance, and the woman that he married. Now, nothing comes up this right now, but he cuts the article out of the paper because apparently he wants to use this at a future date. And then we come to another time gap. Back in the U.S., after a absence of 3 years, Marla comes to find a friend, Francine, and she introduces the child, and she says, oh, this must be Gary's child. And she's like, no, this child does not belong to Gary, and please stop calling me Mrs. Hale, because she thinks that she got married, which she didn't. She looks at the child, and we see a thought bubble of the father, which this kid's like a spitting image. And then she says that this is an adopted son, and Francine seems to be a little embarrassed, like, oh, I didn't know that. Now, the child sees a cat and is calling it Guato. And Marla says, yes, dear, it's a cat. And we've named her Pierre Purr. I can't even. So we cut away to the two ladies talking, and the doorbell rings. She answers it, and the man who appears to be at the door, we will find out, is Albino Joe. She knows who Francine is, even though Francine does not know him. Now, she has her friend take a seat, and she says that she'll be back in a minute. Now, they start having a conversation, basically explaining who he is. He is Albino Joe. This is the one who gave her her fortune. And as they're talking, it's his, yes, you see, Joe is an expert criminologist and one of the shrewdest, coolest, most powerful, or most resourceful men I have ever come across. No matter how desperate the situation, he never gets ruffled or, what's that? And we see in the next page, the child seems to be floating in the air with the plane going and the cat trying to swap the plane while on top of Albino Joe's head. Look, Uncle Joe, Pierre Pure tipped the plane. What the? And it says, follow the further adventures of Miss Fury in the next issue of The Saint. Now, the Saint comic would actually go on, but Miss Fury's appearance would only be in this article. I do believe it was their intention to keep printing out stories, but nothing ever came of that. But I'm not actually sure in what year the Saint came out. It's not a comic book I'm actually familiar with. But this is an idea of what you would see with the Miss Fury comics. Very little action and a lot of talking. So much talking. It's like I was reading the Wasp comic again. Previous Golden Age hero that I've covered. You see it if you look for it. And that's it. Well, I hope you liked this video. I hope that the voice doesn't offend too many people.
You find this a laughing matter?
No, sadly it's not. Anyways, I love doing requests if anybody else has some. I've got a number of requests on the way. I'm more than happy to do those. I love filling out requests because you guys turn me on to heroes that I might not have been getting. I mean, I would eventually have gotten to them, but in the manner of, getting to them now instead of way far in the future, if I'm still doing the channel way far in the future. Okay, so if you have requests, keep sending them in. I'll keep reviewing even if I don't get them. So until next time, I'll be seeing you.